name's Adrian Saunders. I'm Commercial Director at Ecclesiastical, and this is the fourth and final in our series of fair value webinars powered by both RWA and John King. The three that we've already delivered, if at any point you'd like to go back and have a look at those or point colleagues to them, please do so. They'll definitely be able to find them through our website, and I think we'll be sending a link out if we've follow the same process after this one as well. So first three all there to go back and have a look at, but today, as I say, the fourth and final one in the series. So just a bit of housekeeping just before we kick off. So if people could keep their cameras off and keep on mute, that would be fantastic. Just helps with the bandwidth and keeps managing any of that background noise. So cameras off and keep yourself on mute. Questions, yes please, ask as many questions as you like. There's a little bubble at the top. I'm sure after all these months of using Teams I probably don't need to point it out, but by all means post a question as we go through the session this morning, and I will do my best to manage those questions and pose them to John at the end.
Oh, hi, Kirsty.
Oh, somebody's there on without being on mute. If you wouldn't mind just muting your microphone, that'd be great. Super.
Yes.
Or maybe not. Okay. So in that case, I think I should hand over to John, and we'll crack on with the session this morning. John, over to you.
Thank you very much, Adrian, and delighted to be working with you and Ecclesiastical on this important topic. Got a lot of people again today. Good to have you on the webinar, but for any new people and those that don't know me, I'm John King. I was with the FCA FSA for about 16 years. Most of that time was in general insurance supervision, and as well as now being an advisor to RWA, I'm also a non-executive director at A Plan Group and SMF chair of ITC, which is a principal firm to a number of appointed representatives. So I think those roles enable me to see the issues from a number of different angles, and obviously I know what you're going through as well, because my firms are doing the same. So can I have the next slide, please? As Adrian said, this is the fourth and final webinar of the series. And today we're going to be looking at the new reporting requirements coming out from the policy statement. And as I said, they'll be recorded, and you'll now have a complete box set as an early Christmas present for someone if that's what you want to do. So next slide, please. So just to recap before we get into the reporting bit, the final rules were published in May, all 217 pages of them. I put final in speech marks because amendments were made in August, and we'll touch on those. And even now, and I suppose fair play to the FCA, at least it's engaging. It has a Q&A section on its website where it's still answering further questions that it's getting on this. So this is such a big, I think you can understand why it's such a big regulatory area and a big regulatory change, but there's we're nearly there, but there are still a few things that are being answered. So there's two main parts to the pricing practices rules. The first part is pricing practices aimed at motor and home insurance products, and that implementation date is the 1st of January 2022, and that's where the bulk of the regulatory reporting is, and so we're going to be concentrating on that today. But let's not forget product governance, because those that were on the second webinar will remember me saying this in a way is much bigger. It's aimed at virtually all insurance products, and perhaps it's the pricing and motor and home that has grabbed all the media attention and the headlines, but I think this is a bigger thing, and we are now live in that new product governance environment that was live the 1st of October last Friday. Next slide, please. So if we were in a classroom, I'd probably be getting you to chant this out with me, because this is the main rule, and if you know, I've said this before, if you take one thing away from these webinars, this is the thing that you need to take. You know, this is the main rule that underpins everything here. A firm must ensure that it does not systemically discriminate against customers based on their tenure, and that's from the ICOBS section of the rule book. And you know, FCA hopes that this will be an end to the price walking and the loyalty penalty that has been in the motor and home insurance markets for a number of years. And as you will see from the forthcoming slides, the FCA is requiring a lot of reporting on this, and that's so it can see that this discrimination based on tenure is no longer happening. Next slide, please. So again, just a quick recap from the third webinar. You know, what is the pricing remedy? It applies to personal, home or motor insurance, and the renewal price to a customer must be no greater than the equivalent new business price. So you have got to generate a hypothetical EMBP and compare it with the renewal price that you are actually charging that renewing customer. And if you remember, there's obviously a number of components that make up what the customer actually pays, and these all have some various reporting requirements. So, you know, premium, add-ons, premium finance, fees and charges, discounts and incentives. As you can see, there's quite a lot going in to make up what the customer actually pays, and we'll be covering the reporting of all those off in the subsequent slides. So can I have the next slide, please? Again, quick reminder from the third webinar, if you are deemed to be a price setting intermediary, then there are more onerous requirements on you. And so the implications are that you're required to submit an annual attestation to the FCA by an SMF, that's a senior management function, such as the director at the firm, confirming that you're in compliance with the rules. And so I think to give that person some comfort when they're signing off that attestation, you're going to need some good record keeping and documentation. The exact attestation is still to be issued by the FCA, but we've got a draft, and that's coming up in a later slide. And I think, you know, to show how seriously the FCA is taking this, it has commented that it would take a dim view of firms or senior managers trying to get around the rules. It's one of the first times I've seen words such as anti-avoidance provisions, you know, used in an FCA policy statement. But again, I think it just shows how big a thing this is for the FCA, and then obviously for you by implication. And then finally, and obviously main topic of today, there are greater reporting requirements if you are a price setting intermediary. Next slide, please. So what are the reporting requirements? Well, Nicole Rathie, the FCA's CEO, you know, has publicly stated, you know, he wants the FCA to become a data-led regulator, and I think we're certainly seeing it from the reporting requirements that we've got off the back of this policy statement. Reporting was a big area, you know, had one of the areas that had the most challenge during the consultation process. You know, fortunately, there were some concessions from the FCA, such as pushing back the first reporting date and things. But however, you know, unfortunately, there is no minimum threshold for reporting. So, you know, even if you only do a handful of motor, or if you only have a handful of motor or home customers, you may still need to report. And, you know, for example, on an earlier webinar, we had a question from a firm who, you know, had quite a small personal lines book. Really, it was you know, done as a favour for their directors of their commercial customers. So, you know, they may be caught by this as well. Unfortunately, the FCA did not agree to phase this in. I mean, I and others, Bieber, in the consultation process said, well, perhaps, you know, should you get the big firms to report first for a couple of reasons. You know, is the FCA actually going to use all this data that it's going to get? So you can see whether it does, and then it would iron out any teething problems that were there without it being rolled on a, if you like, a pilot or a sample of firms before it's rolled out to the huge bigger population. And then the other area was that do appointed representatives need to report, or more importantly, do their principal firms need to report on their behalf? And the answer to that, and I think that's fair enough, is yes, they do. So just a reminder, if you're a principal firm and have appointed representatives, you are going to be responsible for their regulatory reporting, as you are really responsible for their compliance with these rules, on product governance and on pricing. So I think that just shows again the point that this is a big thing for the FCA. I haven't put the slides up today, but if you remember from the earlier webinars, the amount of money being spoken about here as savings for customers is in the billions. Now, as I said before, that's perhaps more of a redistribution amongst customers rather than customer wins, insurance industry loses. But I think it is just goes to show that it's such a big thing for the FCA. So I think it's likely that all firms operating in the motor and home insurance space are going to be caught to some extent by these reporting rules. So can I have the next slide, please? And as an example, here is one of the questions that is on that Q&A page that the FCA has on its website. About who wouldn't have to submit the REP021, the REP021. This is the main form on this, and I think as you can see from the response, there's not many firms who can say I don't do this, so therefore I don't have to report. So the question was, if an intermediary does not provide premium finance, does not set the selling price of add-ons, and does not charge fees, does it have to complete form REP021 where they have no information to submit? And the FCA says, well, if you don't do that, then you don't have to. But also with premium finance, because the large premium finance providers don't submit this form, it wants the broker or as it calls it, the customer facing firm to submit the premium finance data. So even if you're not setting the price of the premium finance, you're probably still gonna have to report the premium finance data to the FCA. There was some concessions that, and we covered this in the third webinar, that whereby brokers rebate commissions or give incentives to customers. Does this make them a price setting intermediary? No, it doesn't. So they don't need to complete sections 4 and 5 of REP021. And that is, as you'll see, that is quite a good thing to not be able to do. So can I have the next slide, please? So to just sort of unpack that previous slide and that Q&A response from the FCA, basically, if a broker or MGA is involved in setting the price of that, then they need to. So running down that slide. So if you're involved in setting the premium, then you complete sections 4 and 5 of REP021. If you set the price of add-ons, that comes under section 6. If you do premium finance rather than just set the price, then you complete section 6. And if you charge customers fees and charges, then again complete section 6. The commission rebates, and again in the recent Q&A that came out, incentives comes under this as well. You don't have to report on the REP021 form, but what the FCA wants to know is how much of your motor and home sales include commission rebating or incentives. So in a way, you're still going to need to monitor that, and you have to notify the FCA through the attestation if that is more than 25% of your business. Next slide, please. So we're now getting on to the form, and appreciate that it might be difficult to see this on the slide, and we'll provide a link to where you can get the forms afterwards with the recording. But I think the best way is just to sort of talk you through the form. And I think one of the things you might notice straight away is those series of grey boxes there. And what this is doing, and this obviously goes to the heart of it, you are going to have to break your business down by tenure of customer, from T0, i.e. a new business customer, for each individual year, up to T10, and T10 plus is the last one there. And I think, you and the FCA will be able to see from this form then, whether you are charging longer tenure customers more, which, as we said, is it is against the new rule that has come into play. So looking at the Section 6 form, and you might have to do two of these, because in the first sort of drop down box 6.01 there, you're required to do that separately for your motor business and your home business. So you could be doing this twice. And then the first section is the premium finance section. So 6.02, total charged in pounds for retail premium finance in the reporting period, and number of customers that have premium finance. And then I think 604 is quite the key one here, and I think you can see what the FCA is getting at here. You have to break that down by range of APR that they are that the customer is charged from, in bands of about 10%, really, from 0 starting with 0%, between 0.1 and 9.9, going all the way up to 50% or more. And so if you remember from the second webinar, premium finance is also in scope of the value discussions and arguments. So I think you as a firm completing this, and FCA as the regulator receiving this, is going to be able to see your spread of how much you are charging your customers for premium finance. Now obviously what it doesn't want to see is longer tenure customers being charged more, and I think I don't think firms do this, not on premium finance anyway. And if they are charged more, it may be because of greater credit risk and things like that. But again, you can see the FCA is going to have that data, and you want to be asking yourself questions: what is that data showing you, before you submit it to the FCA. And I think also the FCA is in a very strong position, because not only does it get your firm's form on this, it's going to get from the whole of the market. So if you are an outlier from the rest of the market, so if most of your customers are saying the between the 40 and the 49.9% band, when everyone else is saying the 10 to 19.9% band, I think you're going to be getting some questions from the FCA as to why your premium finance rate's so high. How are you treating your customer? How are you acting in the customer's best interest? How is that premium finance providing value for them? So I think you can see this reporting is where it all comes together in a way. Next slide, please. And carrying on then, the rest of Section 6, and again those grey boxes are T0 to the T10 plus, and we have a similar thing for add-ons, and this is where you as the intermediary set the price of the add-ons you're required to report. So I think you need to just agree that with the product provider as to who is responsible for the reporting. So for add-ons, just a couple of rows, but obviously going to give the FCA quite a bit of information. 6.05, total gross written premiums in pounds for add-ons incepted or renewed in the reporting period, and then 6.06, number of add-ons incepted or renewed in the reporting period. And again, just I think if that amount, or you need to perhaps work out the average, but if that amount started going up as you moved across to the right of the form, then you might have some questions to answer. That is it because you are price walking customers, and so let's just give an example under existing situation. It may well be that you give legal expenses, insurance, away for free in the current environment. And so, you know, for that first grade column T0, you would have naught in there, whereas obviously if you were then charging in future years, you know, £30 a policy, you would have some numbers in there. So I think, you know, the FCA would be able to see that very clearly as to what was going on. And then similarly for fees and charges that are set by the broker in addition to the premium. Now, these are split into pre and post contractual, and you know, don't ask me to say what's what, because the FCA has not defined pre and post contractual fees, but I think, you know, you can use your judgment and perhaps some common sense there. But, you know, 6.07 total pre-contractual fees and charges charged to customers in the reporting period, and then 6.08 the average of pre-contractual fees and charges per customer who was charged a fee in the reporting period. So again, if that you know, row 6.08, you know, starts getting bigger as we move across the right of the screen and longer tenure, that could be evidence that you are charging your customers who have been with you more, you know, greater than your new business customers, which obviously again goes against the new rules of discriminating on grounds of tenure. Next slide, please. So we now have section 4, and so this is talking about the core premium of a policy. And, you know, fortunately that line there, only complete this section for the business which your firm is acting as a price setting intermediary. So I think that is going to catch, you know, MGAs for home and motor insurance. Now, we've had the question on previous webinars, I'm a broker that has delegated authority, does that catch me? And unfortunately I can't give you a definite answer. I'm going to sit on the fence and say it depends, you know, how much actual power you have to set that price. And again, that is something that you would need to discuss and agree with the insurer behind you for that delegated authority. Now, for this section 4 bit of the form, you could be doing 6 of these, because the FCA wants this split. And if you look at the 4.01 there, split by motor-cars, motorcycles, including tricycles, and then motor-other. So again, from previous webinars, things like van that is only used for social, domestic and pleasure, caravans, etc. That's the sort of thing that would go in motor-other. And then for home, we have home-buildings and contents, home-buildings only, and home-contents only. So, you know, you could be doing, FCA is getting very granular on this information, and so, you know, quite a lot of data that it is going to get. And, you know, again, it wants it split by channel, and I've just shown the first channel here, which is the direct channel. And again, I think, you know, as with all these forms, you've got that, you know, row of grey boxes, you know, getting it broken down by tenure from customers from T0, i.e. new business, to T10 plus. So what it's looking for here is 4.02 total gross written premium in pounds, total net rated written premium in pounds, average gross premium, average net rated premium, and then 4.06 average prior year gross premium. That's so it can see the movement year on year for a cohort of customers. Total number of policies incepted and renewed, and total number of policies in force at the end of the reporting period. Now, alongside the form, there's also, you know, some guides to completing these forms that do define them in more detail. So I'd obviously recommend that you look at those as well. So, you know, quite a lot of data there. Can I have the next slide, please? And again, still carrying on with this REP021 form. As I said, I only showed you the first channel, which was direct. There are 4 channels: direct, intermediary, PCW, and affinity partnership. So, you know, you have to obviously know where your business is coming in. If you are a price setting intermediary for the premium, you need to know which channels your business is coming in from and report accordingly. And then you provide a total, aggregated for all the channels. And then section 5 of the form is similar to section 4, except that it is for closed books. And if you remember from previous webinars, a closed book is where there is not that much new business. So it's difficult to determine an equivalent new business price. I mean, you have to, and I think what you need to report for each closed book with more than 10,000 policies, and then in aggregate for those books with less than 10,000 policies. And perhaps to give you some comfort here, I probably don't think there's many brokers that have closed books. I mean, but where you do, and as mentioned in webinar 3, that's probably a separate project to look at the closed book, so how you determine an equivalent new business price, and I suppose I'd add to that now how you do the reporting of it as well. And then just for completeness, because I've gone backwards in doing this form 654, section 1 is the cover sheet, so name and basic firm details. And then sections 2 and 3 are for insurers and managing agents, and that's Lloyd's managing agents, not MGAs. And they have a lot, you think you've got it bad, they have a lot more detail, such as claims data, to include as well. So next slide, please. So as I said, there were some concessions from the FCA with the dates and periods being pushed back. So the first one of these is an interim report for the first 6 months of 2022, and that is required by the 30th of September 2022. I mean, the FCA had originally wanted this quarterly, but conceded on that. So you have got a bit of time, but I wouldn't leave this to the last minute. I'd start looking at it now, really. And then there's ongoing reports for calendar years by 31st of March the following year. So I think, reason why I wouldn't leave this to the last minute is I think you need to work out, what you need to report and liaise with other parties as to who is responsible for reporting what. I think, you've seen there's quite a lot of data and detail that is required there, and, can your existing systems do it? I think, one of the reasons for the FCA pushing back, the deadline of the rules to the 1st of January, and pushing back the reporting as well, is because Bieber and others in response said the software houses are going to need a lot of time to get the systems up and running to be able to do this. And so I think you should, if you haven't, set up a project team for reporting, and you probably want to include your finance people in this, as a lot of that information is going to be coming out of your accounts and financial systems and things. And obviously, this is an area where RWA can help. Next slide, please. So that's the REP021 form done. The other thing that you're required to submit is an attestation. Now, in the consultation process, some of the respondents said, well, why do we need to do an attestation? FCA, we've got the senior managers and certification regime, SM and CR. People have got statements of responsibility. Someone's going to be responsible to pricing. Isn't it them? Now, this was the FCA's response. We consider that this requirement will form a valuable component in our ongoing work to hold firms and individuals to account for ending price walking for home and motor insurance. So that's us told, basically. Next slide, please. So the attestation is for those firms that have a price setting role and attesting for the portion of the price set by the firm. And that's an annual requirement for an SMF, so senior management function director, to confirm compliance with the rules. Also on this attestation, you report if more than 25% of home or motor sales include commission rebating or incentives. Now, you're not required to attest compliance by other firms, but sorry about that. The FCA has said that, you know, if you are aware that another firm in the distribution chain is not applying the pricing remedy properly, then you should contact the FCA. So that will be, so in a way, you need to look at what other people are doing as well. Now, the first one is due on the 31st of March 2022. And really that's attesting that you were ready at the 1st of January to go live. And then when we move into ongoing business in this regime, it's annually thereafter for the period 1st of January to 31st of December by the 31st of March the following year. So have the next slide, please. As I said, we're still waiting for the attestation. In the August policy statement amendments, the FCA said the wording would be available very shortly. I did remind them earlier this week that, you know, we're still waiting for that, so hopefully it will be coming out very shortly. But for the moment, we will work on the draft attestation that was in the May policy statement, and, you know, just take you through that. So it's, you know, point 1, I attest that I am satisfied that the firm is and has been complying with the requirements in ICOB 6B, so that's the home insurance and motor insurance pricing chapter, for the most recent reporting period. And 2, I am satisfied that the pricing of home insurance and motor insurance renewal business and related sales practices, you know, A, are consistent with the objectives of the rules set out in ICOB 6B.1.4G. That is the purpose of the rules. And, you know, just looking that one up, that's to promote competition through ensuring consumers have a realistic picture of the long-term cost of their chosen product when purchasing it, and incentivizing firms to compete for consumer business on this basis. And secondly, to protect consumers through ensuring that they are placed in a position where they can understand the long-term cost of their product. And then part B, do not discriminate against customers of longer tenure as set out in ICOB 6B.2.39R. Well, you know that one off by heart now because I've been covering it in every webinar. That's not discriminating on grounds of tenure. And then the other ones, ICOB 6B.2.47R and ICOBs 6B.2.48R. And these ones are more about communicating with customers in the sales process, that you don't put up barriers to the renewing customers from getting the best prices and things. And, you know, some of you may remember in July this year, Lloyds Bank General Insurance was fined £90 million by the FCA for communication failures in their renewal letters, and this came down to, you know, Lloyds Bank General Insurance saying to consumers, you know, they were getting a competitive price in the renewal letter. That was what it sort of said, when actually, and per the FCA's enforcement notice that came out alongside this, you know, they were price walking customers. There was an example of a customer who had paid £268 in 2005, and that had gone up, you know, without really any changes in the risk, to circumstances, had gone up to 905 in 2014. So I think, you know, you can see where the FCA is coming from on this, and why it is such a big, you know, thing for them. And then finally, point 3 on the attestation, and I think, you know, you'd probably want to get some advice before you went down this point 3 attestation, or bit of the attestation. I cannot make the above attestation for the following, and you've got some free text reasons there. The dog ate my homework, or whatever. I think you're probably going to be up against it if you have to go down that route of not being able to make the attestation. So if you are in that situation, again, don't leave it to the last minute. Think about it, and obviously get some help and advice. Next slide, please. So I think, as I said, to support the brave person giving the attestation in terms of demonstrating compliance with the rules and signing that attestation off, then I think you're going to need some good documentation and records, and not surprisingly, the FCA recognises that as well. And in the rules, ICOB 6B.2.51R, a firm must make and retain written records of how it continues to satisfy itself that it does not systemically discriminate against customers based on tenure, in contravention of that rule I've been banging on about. And obviously that includes things like looking at the EMBP, the equivalent new business price, and comparing that with what you're actually charging renewal customers. Some of you may have a model to generate the EMBP, and so you're testing about the systems and controls around that model. And again, add-ons that customers are longer tenure are getting a fair price for their add-ons, and likewise with fees and charges. Now I think you can see that most of those match what we've been talking about on the REP021 form. So you as a firm, and obviously the FCA as the regulator is going to see that. And then the final point there, and again that is from the rules as well, if you've had any independent oversight of the above, and that will stand you in good stead, and obviously that's an area where RWA can help. Next slide, please. So obviously most of the reporting, most of this session has been on the home and motor insurance pricing rules. I will just say a quick word about reporting on product governance as well. And but really most of the product governance reporting is more about firms themselves documenting that a product provides fair value, and their role in and remuneration still means that the customer's getting fair value when your firms are doing their value assessments of their products, rather than it being a formal return to the FCA as such. Now since the second webinar, which was on the product governance section, pleased to see that industry is getting on with this to some extent, and the LMA, the Lloyd's Market Association, has issued guidance and is working with a bunch of acronyms there, the IUA, LIBA, BIBA and MGA, to try and facilitate the information exchange between carriers and intermediaries. Unfortunately they haven't come up with it yet, but it's good to see that the trade bodies are working together on this. And from speaking with Chris Withers and Adrian earlier at this, I know Ecclesiastical is again getting in touch with you as the brokers in this area. One report that does go in, although it's mainly down to insurers, is the REP019 report, and that's the value measures report for personal lines products. And we covered that off in value measures in the second webinar, and that data will be available in the first half of 2022, as insurers are required to report for the sort of second half of 2021, and that's quite granular by personal lines products, and that will be some published information that the FCA will publish that you can use to judge, help judge the value assessments of your products. The only caveat I would say to brokers is that where you use an overseas insurer, then the FCA has said it may be down to the broker to report the value measures data. If you are in that situation, I would suggest you discuss with that overseas insurer and encourage them to report the value measures data, which I think, you know, they should do. And obviously they're in the temporary permission regime now as well, so, you know, the UK regulators have more of a hold of them than they did previously. Next slide, please. So obviously we're coming to the end now of we've covered a lot in the four webinars, but, you know, next steps, you know, what should you be going away and doing? Well, I think, you know, obviously, and concentrating on the motor and home business in this one. So assess your motor and home insurance business. You know, where are you a price setting intermediary? You know, how are you determining, you know, an equivalent new business price? Because, you know, you've got to come up with that and then compare it with what you're actually charging your renewing customers. You know, do you need to change any of your existing practices to be compliant with the new rules? So, for example, you know, if you've been giving free legal expenses to new business customers and charging renewing customers, that's not going to be allowed from the 1st of January, because, you know, that is discriminating on grounds of tenure. So, you know, you may need to change your existing practices. As I've mentioned before, you know, have you got any closed books that are difficult to find an equivalent new business price for? And I think, as I said, that's probably going to be a sort of separate project in its own right. What, you know, coming out of today's webinar, you know, what do you need to report, and have you got that information? I think you can see from what we've been through, it is very detailed and very granular. What other parties in the distribution chain do you need to work with? And, you know, obviously engage with them and don't leave it to the last minute. And then don't want to leave this on a downer, but, you know, some of you may, you know, it's probably a decision that some firms may need to have. You know, do you want to continue offering motor and home insurance, or is it, you know, is it not, you know, economically viable? It's just not worth it if you've got a small book for everything that you have got to go through under these new rules. Next slide, please. So thank you for listening over the 4 sessions. Just perhaps probably a bit early to wish you a happy Christmas, but there are only 80 days until Christmas. But that also means there are only 87 days until the new year and the commencement of the pricing rules on the 1st of January. So good luck with that, and obviously happy to take any questions that have come in to Adrian. Thank you.